Okay, this is our first tutorial for QGIS, and it's involving the essential plugin number one, which is QuickMap Services. Note that when you open QGIS and make a new project for the first time, you're just going to get a blank screen, and that can be intimidating. So we want to fill that blank page, as my father used to say, the blank page is your enemy. Fill it with something, and the first something in a mapping service is, of course, a map. And you don't have maps available in QGIS as you do in ArcGIS available immediately because QGIS is lean and mean, and it's supposed to run on every operating system with very limited resources, so everybody has access to this free, wonderful, open source, and powerful GIS program, depending on the limits of your machinery or your web speed. And so it starts out with basically nothing, and what you add functionality with are these things called plugins. And so the first thing you want to do is look up here at the top, and you want to go to plugins over here. See project, edit, view, layers, settings, plugins, and click on manage and install plugins. It's the first thing that appears here. And when you do that, you're going to get a window. It's going to look, actually mine is, I got a lot of installed plugins. You're probably going to see it nothing installed, but I have a bunch of plugins installed. There might be some that come with it. And I go and I do, my first thing is I search for a map. If I just do map, there's a lot of different maps that come up. So that's going to be overwhelming. What you want is a quick map because you want to get into the game quickly. And you want your map to be the quickest map you can get. So type in quick map and you will see quick map services. Now mine's already installed, but you'll see a button here that says install plugin. Mine says reinstall plugin. Doesn't hurt if I do. You can also upgrade all your plugins. Now mine is installed and reinstalled, and that then gives you access to QuickMap services. Now where are they? It's a plugin, so you'd think it would be under plugins. I have a bunch of plugins I downloaded down here. Normally for you this would be probably blank, but it doesn't show up there because it is a web service. These maps are coming from the World Wide Web, so when you install that plugin under manage and install plugins, and you put in QuickMap services, the place it's going to show up is under web, and it'll be here. I have a bunch of other stuff that comes from the web and other plugins that I put in. Mine shows up here, QuickMap services, and yours may be blank. It may not have any of these services, Google and Esri from ARC and Waze and NASA and the USGS Geological Services, OpenStreetMap. You may not have any of these, and that would be because you haven't put the settings to make them available yet. So go to settings. The first thing you're going to do is go, after you've installed it, web, QuickMap services, settings, and then go to more services and get contributed pack, because people contribute maps in a package that's free, and you want to have the last version of the contributed pack. So you download that. When you have that, then when you go to web and QuickMap services, you'll have all of these maps. Notice there's a little icon there that looks like the world. There's another way to access QuickMap services, and it would come in under here, QuickMap services. You see, if you hover over, you see Search QMS. That's another plugin I have. QuickMap services, Meta Search, QGIS. I got a lot of different stuff going on, and your menu bar is probably going to look different than mine depending on how new you are to the game. So you can find it there under the world. It will take you to the same menu, but always know that you can find it under web. So what's the first map you'd put in? For me, I always do Google Hybrid. Why do I do Google Hybrid? It's because it is the same map that I'm always using when I use Google Maps, and it has most of the same information. So it's very familiar to me, and it zooms in really well, which some of the other maps don't. So when I go back here and I start zooming in, you can see that I can get some quite close zooms, and I can get roads and things. So it's pretty cool. But how do you find stuff on it? Are you going to always try to find Morocco, then find Marrakesh, and then try to zoom in until you find the place where you want to visit? That's awkward. So how do you do it? Well, there's a search bar here on the bottom. problem is that none of this is geocoded yet. So if I put in Marrakesh, nothing comes up. If I put in New York, nothing comes up. If I put in Paris, nothing comes up. So if you watched our cesium ion tutorial for our first exercise, you noted that when we had that same problem with cesium ion, we simply went and found the things in the map here and then got the lat lon and put them in. So if I find the High Atlas Foundation in Morocco, and there, oops, that's the one outside of Marrakesh. Let me find the other one. High Atlas Foundation, Marrakesh. There it is. Okay, so this is what we were looking at in cesium, if you recall. That's very specific. So I can right-click on it. If I can get the image to stop here. Yep. Get the latitude, 31.6, and the longitude, -8.0. Right-click. Click on that, left-click. So you right-click to pull it up, and then left-click to save it to the clipboard. Then go back to QGIS, and then put that down here in the search bar. And then go to coordinate by clicking up here where it says go to coordinate, and bing. And it did blink there for a second, but it didn't take us to the building because of our zoom level. And that's important in all these programs. Your zoom level is going to determine whether or not you're going to see anything useful. Because if I go back to that lat lon and I go to it with the map zoomed out like this, yeah, it's blinking right up there in Morocco, but I aren't seeing it. So how do you fix that? Do you zoom in manually? You can, but the best thing to do is to go down here to scale, right down here in the right middle bottom of the screen, and click on it and go to 1 to 2,500. That's the level. And if you're there at that level and you click on this, bingo, you go right to the building. It'll get better if you're at 1 and 1,000. If you are at 1 in 1,000, so let me move out to some island in the Atlantic Ocean, and then I'll go back to my lat lon for the High Atlas Foundation and go to it, but zoom to 1 in 1,000 of that island. Then click on this. Now it takes you right to the building. So you can get as close as 1 in 500, and that's how you'll find places. Similarly, as we did in the cesium ion tutorial, if I go to the Eiffel Tower and find that, and they got a great 3D thing, but click on that lat lon and come back to QGIS and paste that in here and make sure your scale is close enough. Now when you click on that, it'll take you right to the Eiffel Tower, that exact same look that you had gotten. So that's how you move around with QuickMap services no matter where you are in the world, and you just have to know the lat and the lon. And you need to be sufficiently zoomed in if you're looking for a particular building. So another example might be that if I'm looking at the Akrish Cemetery, and I wasn't at all zoomed in there, but I do have it saved. No, that's also on university, so where do I have my cemetery? I think I need to put Akrish in here. There we go. So if I want to find Akrish and then I want to find the cemetery where the tree nursery is, I can find the cemetery, right click on this, grab this information, come to QGIS, bring this into here, and choose a scale that will be helpful to me. Let's do 1 in 500. Click on that, and then bang, Monument Cemetery. And then we have these locations. Now, it'll be really helpful if you bookmark locations so you don't have to go through this all the time. And there is a bookmarking function in here for this map. And so what you would do is you want to go to View up here and go to New Spatial Bookmark and then call it, for example, Akrish Nursery and Cemetery, and then save it. And then if you view the bookmarks, show spatial bookmarks, they will show up here and you can find them right there. And that way, if you do inadvertently zoom out, somehow you can always go and click on the bookmark right there. Same thing if you had the High Atlas Foundation we were looking at. Let's go through this again. Except that my computer is frozen. There we go. So we go to the High Atlas Foundation and we grab those coordinates and come back to QGIS and paste it in and go there. There we are with the High Atlas Foundation. And now we would go to View and New Spatial Bookmark and call it High Atlas Foundation Marrakesh. And then that comes in there, and then you can jump in between the nursery and Marrakesh at any level. You can always get back to that bookmark, and the bookmark was bookmarked at that zoom level, which is very useful. So it's good to have that capability as you're working through this. In the next tutorial, we're going to show geocoded ways of finding things with another plugin, but this is the most basic, using QuickMap services, and it gives you a lot of different maps and puts them in layers. So I'll turn it off. That map is now blank. Turn it on, turn it off. I can bring in, keep that map there and just sort of toggle it off so I can't see it. Bring in another web map, which in this case might be ESRI, and bring in the ESRI satellite, and there it is, and it's over the same location. When you have layers, I'll bring in another map just to show you web QuickMap services. Let's bring in the National Geographic map as well, and it says map data not yet available. I'll go into why that is in a second. I'll bring in another map, and let's bring in the OpenStreetMap standard, and let's bring in another map and bring in the OpenStreetMap topographic. And you will see that each map is different and some of them just don't show up. For example, OpenTopomap shows up here, but when you zoom in, it stops showing up because they each have a different resolution. Here, OpenStreetMap Standard shows up. ESRI National Geographic does show up at this resolution, but as you zoom in, it says map data not yet available. The ESRI satellite is nice, high quality image, but when you zoom in, it says map yet not available. Whereas with Google Hybrid, you can go in and it'll keep redrawing. It's probably the best map. If you don't like the hybrid, you can go to Web and go to QuickMap Services, go to Google and just get their satellite and bring that in. Let's bring the hybrid underneath the satellite. The satellite has no street information. If I go to our spatial bookmarks and go to the nursery, the ESRI satellite was the one on top. That's why it didn't show up. The National Geographic doesn't show up. Google Satellite, if I bring it on top, is nice and has a lot of detail. You can really zoom in on a Google Satellite. Same thing with the High Atlas Foundation, but that has no streets. So the Google Hybrid, if I put that on top and toggle it, that one has street information, which the satellite does not. So it depends on what you want to show in your map. Notice that these layers are stacked one on top of the other, and the camera is always looking down this way toward the stack. So whatever's on top is what's going to show up. And if you wanted, for example, to have the ESRI satellite appearing over the National Geographic, or let's see, when you have the National Geographic over the ESRI satellite, National Geographic you have to be zoomed out a bit to show, because it's showing topography. If you wanted to see the satellite underneath it, then you'd go to National Geographic and double click on it and go up to transparency, and move the opacity and apply it. And then you can sort of see that topography from that geo and its information, say, okay, showing up through it. Whereas that's what the satellite would look like without it, and this is what that would look like with nothing underneath. But you can put all sorts of stuff underneath. So you can move these around and you can affect their transparency. If I move ESRI OSM standard on top, but I want to have Google satellite underneath, I check it. It's going to be turned off now. These two are the only ones active. The camera's looking down through. OpenStreetMap standard. Google hybrid is not on. Oops. And Google satellite should show up through. If I click on OSM standard, double click, go to transparency, and bring the transparency down, I can check by applying and see just how much I want stuff to show through. That then will enable me to look at one as if it was on a projector and there literally was a transparency on top of another one. So you have all of these capabilities to bring in maps and affect their transparency. That should get you started with working with maps. And in our next tutorial, we're going to bring in another plugin that will let us type in the names of things like Eiffel Tower or like the Kutuba Mosque in Marrakesh, and then find them. Maybe that's the last thing we'll do before we exit, just in the way of review. Because we have QuickMap services, you'd have to get your information from maps.google.com, find that mosque there, which is so famous, right click, left click, that copies it to the clipboard, come back to QGIS, bring it down here to the bottom, paste it in, double click, and of course it's blinking there, but you don't see it because we're at the wrong scale. So come down to about 1 in 1,000, and there we are. If you think you've done something in error, just go back and double click on it. So that's the mosque there. Under OpenStreetMap standard, under Google hybrid, it looks like that. Under Google satellite, it looks like that. And National Geographic, it won't show up because it's too close. And ESRI satellite, it won't show up. You have to back off, and then you get a really good image from it there. You can look at TopoMap and see some of the topographical information around it. So lots of different maps, lots of different information, lots of ways to visualize things. And so it's a whole lot of fun playing with these maps. Next time, the geocoding plugin that lets you put in street addresses and proper names of places. Thanks for watching.